There exists a mineral that stops any leak permanently. It does not patch it temporarily. It does not slow down water infiltration. It stops it permanently. A cracked clay tile roof treated with this mineral in powder form mixed with water stops leaking within 48 hours and remains sealed for decades. A flat concrete roof with micro cracks across the entire surface becomes completely waterproof after 2 applications. A corrugated metal roof with rust holes large enough to fit a finger through becomes completely sealed and withstands 5 consecutive winters of heavy snow and ice without a single drop entering. The mineral bonds to the roof, substrate at a crystalline level. Growing microscopic fingers of calcium silicate deep into every crack, pore, and fracture until the entire surface becomes a single continuous waterproof matrix. Without tar, without rubber membrane, without professional application equipment, a bucket of water, a stiff brush, and $1's worth of powder from any masonry material store. Roman engineers used this mineral to waterproof the foundations of aqueducts that carried water for more than 500 years, without a single structural leak. Byzantine builders applied it to the domed roofs of churches that still remain watertight today after 15 centuries of Mediterranean rain. Indigenous builders throughout Central America mixed it into the stone roofs of temples that perfectly diverted water through thousands of rainy seasons. Then the roofing industry was born, and within 50 years, this mineral had disappeared from every professional roofing manual, every technical school curriculum, and every hardware store shelf in America. They did not stop using it because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well. A mineral that permanently waterproofs any roof cannot sustain a 56 billion roofing industry built entirely on materials that degrade and require replacement on a predictable schedule. This is the story of the mineral that empires trusted with their most critical infrastructure, and that the modern roofing industry spent a century making you forget. Now let me take you to the beginning of all this. The year is 1824, and a British mason named Joseph Aspden is standing in his kitchen in Leeds, heating a mixture of crushed limestone and clay in a cast iron pot over a coal fire. Aspden is not a scientist. He is a craftsman who has spent 20 years watching mortar joints fail in the damp climate of Yorkshire, convinced that the ancient Romans knew something about masonry that his entire generation had forgotten. He heats his mixture until it calcines, grinds the result into a fine powder, and mixes it with water. The paste hardens overnight. He patents his invention and calls it Portland cement. But here's the critical detail that the modern construction industry has spent 200 years obscuring. Portland cement is not what makes Roman concrete waterproof. The Romans used a fundamentally different mineral compound that Aspden's invention replaced in the market, but never replicated in performance. The Roman compound is called pozzolana, a naturally occurring volcanic ash found in deposits near the ancient city of Pozzuoli in the Bay of Naples. Roman engineers had been mixing pozzolana with lime and seawater since the 2nd century BC to create a hydraulic concrete that hardened underwater and became more waterproof with each passing decade instead of less. The Pantheon of Rome, built around the year 125 AD, has a concrete dome that has diverted rainwater continuously for nearly 1900 years without a single waterproofing repair. The harbor of Caesarea Maritima, built around 20 BC, used pozzolana concrete for underwater foundations that are still structurally intact today after 2,000 years of constant immersion in salt water. That is a documented archaeological fact, confirmed by materials scientists at the University of California, Berkeley, in a study published in 2017, and the compound responsible costs approximately dollars per pound in any masonry supply store under the name of volcanic ash or natural pozzolan. But the story does not begin with Rome. Let me take you to the island of Santorini around 1600 BC. The Minoan civilization had developed construction techniques using local volcanic deposits that archaeologists have only recently begun to fully understand. Excavations in the ancient city of Akrotiri revealed building foundations using a mixture of lime and volcanic ash that had remained completely impermeable to groundwater for more than 3,000 years of burial. Throughout the ancient Mediterranean, every civilization with access to volcanic deposits independently discovered the same truth. Mixed with lime and water, volcanic ash creates a crystalline reaction product called calcium silicate hydrate, which fills every pore and fracture in stone or masonry with microscopic crystalline structures that become denser and harder over time instead of degrading. Unlike modern roofing membranes that sit on top of the substrate and eventually delaminate and fail, the calcium silicate hydrate network grows within the substrate itself. It does not coat the surface, it becomes the surface. Every drop of water that contacts the treated material triggers a chemical reaction that produces more calcium silicate hydrate crystals, making the waterproofing self-healing at a molecular level. This is what happens at the molecular level when you apply this mineral to a leaking roof. Natural pozzolan powder contains amorphous silicon dioxide and aluminum oxide in reactive form. When mixed with hydrated lime and water, a chemical reaction called the pozzolanic reaction begins immediately. The silicon dioxide and aluminum oxide react with calcium hydroxide to form calcium silicate hydrate and calcium aluminate hydrate, the same crystalline compounds that give Roman concrete its legendary durability. These reaction products are not soluble in water. They are not washed away by rain. They grow as crystals that interlock with each other and with the mineral structure of any masonry, concrete, clay, or stone substrate they contact. In a leaking roof, this crystalline growth occurs preferentially within cracks and fractures where water infiltration occurs, because water carries dissolved ions to the damaged areas, and crystallization occurs where the ion concentration is highest. The mineral literally chases the leak paths and fills them from within. A study published by researchers from the Delft University of Technology in 2014 measured the crack-filling performance of natural pozzolana mixed with lime in concrete samples with artificial cracks up to 0.4 milliliter wide. The pozzolanic mixture completely sealed all cracks within 72 hours, and the sealed samples showed zero water permeability under pressure tests equivalent to a 30 milliliter water column. Zero permeability from a powder that cost per pound. So why is a mineral that permanently waterproofs any masonry roof not the first recommendation of every roofer? The global roofing market generates more than $56 billion in annual revenue in the United States alone. The average asphalt shingle roof costs between $8,000 and $1,000 to replace and lasts between 15 and 30 years. The average flat membrane roof on a commercial building requires full replacement every 10 to 20 years. Every dollar of that revenue depends on a physical reality. Roofing materials degrade. A mineral that permanently eliminates water infiltration through crystalline self-repair does not fit anywhere within a business model built on material degradation and scheduled replacement. You cannot patent natural volcanic ash because it is a geological material deposited on the surface of the earth by volcanic activity over millions of years. You cannot create a subscription model around a powder that costs, is applied in one afternoon, and then continues actively self-repairing using nothing more than the rainwater that falls on it. The suppression was methodical and completely rational from the industry's economic point of view. During the post-war construction boom of the 1950s and 1960s, the American roofing industry rapidly consolidated around petroleum-based products. Asphalt shingles, tar paper, and bituminous membrane systems offered something that natural pozzolana could never provide: a predictable and relatively short replacement cycle. Roofing trade associations successfully lobbied for building codes that required specific approved materials for residential roof waterproofing. Natural pozzolanic treatments were classified as non-standard and excluded from the lists of approved materials that determine what licensed contractors can legally install. Insurance companies included clauses in homeowner policies that voided coverage for water damage if non-approved roofing materials had been used. You could not legally use the natural mineral on a permitted construction project. Your insurance would not cover you if you used it without approval, and the only approved alternatives were products that the roofing industry manufactured and sold. A retired civil engineer in Portland documented this suppression in a technical report in 2009. He tracked specific regulatory changes that removed pozzolanic treatments from approved roofing practice guidelines between 1955 and 1975 in 14 American states. In each case, the regulatory revision was initiated by a petition from a roofing industry trade association and approved without any independent technical review of the mineral's actual performance data. This is exactly what you should do. Buy natural pozzolana powder, also sold as volcanic ash or natural volcanic pozzolan, from any masonry supply store or online mineral supplier. This costs between $1 and per pound, and a 25-pound bag treats approximately 400 square feet of roof surface. Also buy hydrated lime from any masonry materials store or agricultural supply. Mix 3 parts. Pozzolana powder with 1 part hydrated lime in a dry bucket and stir to combine. Add water slowly while mixing until you reach a consistency slightly thinner than yogurt. For sloped roofs with clay, concrete, or stone tiles, apply the mixture directly to the roof surface using a stiff masonry brush, working the material firmly into any visible cracks, gaps between tiles, and areas of surface damage. Pay special attention to ridges, valley joints, and areas around chimneys, vents, and skylights, because these are the most common starting points for leaks. For flat concrete or masonry roofs, apply in 2 coats using a wide brush, allowing the first coat to set for 24 hours before applying the second coat perpendicular to the first. For corrugated metal or aged asphalt surfaces, clean the surface with a wire brush to remove loose scale. Then apply the mixture to all joints, seams, and areas of visible damage. Allow the treated surface to cure for 72 hours before exposing it to rain. Lightly spray the surface with water twice a day during curing if conditions are dry and hot, because the pozzolanic reaction requires moisture to continue progressing. The crystalline network will continue to grow and densify for months after application as rainwater contacts the treated surface making the waterproofing progressively more complete over time. A homeowner in rural Scotland applied a mixture of pozzolana and lime to the roof of a 200-year-old stone farmhouse that had been leaking in 3 separate locations for more than a decade. Professional roofers had quoted between £4,000 and £9,000 for various repair options. After a single weekend application, the roof showed 0 water infiltration during its first Scottish winter, and has remained dry through 4 subsequent winters of heavy rain and freezing conditions. His total material cost was £32 sterling. Certain knowledge never truly disappears. It waits in the concrete dome of the Pantheon, still diverting rain after 19 centuries. It waits in the foundations of the harbor of Caesarea Maritima, still standing after 2,000 years of immersion in salt water. It waits in the buried buildings of ancient Akrotiri, perfectly waterproof after 3,000 years underground. The Roman engineers who mixed volcanic ash with lime and seawater in the 2nd century BC understood something that the $56 billion roofing industry has spent a century making sure you never learned. Water infiltration is not inevitable. It is a surface condition, and surface conditions can be permanently changed with mineral powder in an afternoon of your time. If this changed the way you see the roof over your head and every repair estimate you have ever received, subscribe and share this video now. Every share puts this knowledge back into the hands of someone who is still paying $10,000 for a replacement roof. When a solution has been waiting in volcanic deposits since before Rome laid its first stone. Yeah,